Okay, let's dive right into this. Have you ever stopped to think about how one single person, their character, their actions, can actually ripple out and shape the future of an entire community or even a nation? Well, today we're exploring this incredibly powerful idea about influence and prosperity, and we're pulling it from an ancient story that has some surprisingly modern things to say to us.
Right. This is it. This single, powerful idea is really the heart of our whole explainer today. We're going to unpack it by taking a look at the legendary King Solomon, because his story shows us a principle that one sermon calls the channel of blessing. The basic idea is that one individual can become the pipeline for an entire community's well-being. It's a fascinating concept.
So, first things first, we gotta set the stage. To really understand how this works, we need to see what it looked like. And in Solomon's case, the what was, well, an era of almost unbelievable national prosperity. A true golden age.
I mean, the sheer scale of Solomon's kingdom was just staggering. The population was enormous, described as being as numerous as the sand on the seashore. The territory was vast, stretching all the way from the Euphrates River down to the border of Egypt. And what's really remarkable is how stable it all was. Neighboring kingdoms weren't fighting or rebelling, they were peacefully paying tribute. Why? Because the empire's military and diplomatic strength was just completely unchallenged. It was a picture of total security.
And what's really interesting here is that the kingdom's wealth wasn't just about money or power. It was also an intellectual and cultural golden age. The sermon we're looking at points out that Solomon himself was deeply involved in what we'd now call the humanities, natural sciences, and the arts. So he wasn't just a king, he was a scholar, a poet, and a naturalist.
And this is maybe the most important part. This prosperity wasn't just for the rich and powerful. This beautiful phrase, each person lived in peace under their own vine and fig tree, it paints a picture of widespread personal abundance. It means the average person felt safe, they felt secure, they had enough. This wasn't just a strong kingdom on a map. It was a place where ordinary people could actually thrive.
Okay, so you see all this peace, all this wealth, and you have to ask, right? Where did it all come from? How did this happen? Well, that question brings us to the absolute core concept of the sermon we're analyzing.
The speaker gives us this really powerful metaphor, the channel of blessing. The idea is that Solomon wasn't the source of all this prosperity. Nope. Instead, he was the channel through which it flowed from a higher source to his people. You can think of him as the human pipeline for the entire nation's well-being.
And just like that, the sermon flips this ancient idea right back on us with a deeply personal modern question. It asks us to stop and think. In our own lives, in our families, our workplaces, our neighborhoods, are we a channel for good things? Or are our actions making us a source of anxiety and worry for the people around us? It's a heavy question.
Now, to really get this idea, we have to understand a super important distinction that the speaker makes. It's all about perspective, about seeing your role not as the creator of your own fortune, but as its manager, its steward. So let's break down the difference between the source and the channel.
You can see it laid out here pretty clearly. The sermon argues that a person, like Solomon, acts as the channel. They are the conduit, the steward, the agent who receives something and then distributes it. But the source is seen as something else entirely, the ultimate origin, the provider, the fountainhead that actually creates and gives everything, from wealth to wisdom in the first place.
And you know, this idea wasn't some new thing Solomon just came up with. The sermon drives this home by quoting his own father, King David. This shows that it was a foundational belief in their leadership, that all the good stuff, wealth, honor, you name it, ultimately comes from a divine source. And their job as leaders was just to manage it wisely for the good of everyone.
Okay, so if Solomon was this incredibly effective channel, how did he actually do it? How did he get there? Well, the sermon doesn't leave it a mystery. It argues that he was specifically prepared for this role, and that this preparation itself is a kind of model we can look at today.
So, according to the sermon, this preparation had three key parts. First, he had faith. He held on to a divine promise for his nation's future. Second, he lived with reverence, which is just a deep respect for the ultimate source of all his gifts. And third, and this one is absolutely crucial, his work was always pointed towards others. He actively worked for the well-being of his people, making sure his goal wasn't just personal gain, but the flourishing of the entire community.
So this brings us right into the modern world. If this framework for being a channel exists, what stops more of us from living that way? Well, the speaker identifies a major psychological barrier that gets in pretty much everyone's way. The speaker calls it the problem of possessions.
It's basically the mindset that we are the sole source of our own security. It's that feeling that we have to personally create and grab and hold on to everything we need. But paradoxically, this belief doesn't lead to peace at all. It leads to constant gnawing anxiety. And when you're caught in this trap, the symptoms, man, they probably sound pretty familiar. You're worried all the time. You never feel truly secure, no matter how much you actually have. You live with this background feeling of scarcity, this fear of not having enough, which in the end makes it impossible to actually enjoy the good things you already possess.
So here's the crucial point, the big takeaway. The sermon argues that the problem, most of the time, isn't a lack of resources in our lives. The real problem is a possessive mindset that literally blinds us to them. The abundance is often already there, in our health, our relationships, our daily lives, but that anxiety of ownership, that feeling that we have to control it all, prevents us from even seeing it, let alone enjoying it.
And that leaves us with this one final, really provocative question that kind of wraps this whole thing up. In your life, in your work, and in your relationships, what's your main focus? Are you trying to accumulate blessings just for yourself, or are you trying to become a channel, allowing good things to flow through you for the benefit of everyone around you? It's something to think about.